try and find out who iPhone 33 is and put a name to the face. Good morning, everybody. It is I don't even know what today is. It's later than normal in June. It is June 13th. Welcome to the monthly installment of the FFLGuard clients only webinar. Of course, we're recording this for posterity because we seem to get a lot more traction when people can watch it at their convenience. Joining me today from the team are, from left to right, I see my brother Brian, Client Relations Team Manager, Avis, Client Relations Team Specialist, Michael Franzak, Director of Compliance, Hank Yasek, Guru of all business operational things, Deborah, another Client Relations Specialist, and of course, our ATF Liaison and OPSEC Specialist, Mike Bouchard. Spoke with Rick Vasquez. He will not be joining us today, our NFA subject matter expert. He is actually training a bunch of liberal media folks on how guns work, that people have to pull the trigger. It's the whole thing. I don't know if you've heard that. So to that end, I will start by telling everyone that our next meeting will not be until Monday, July 18th. Same bat time, just July 18th. The 1st to the 15th will not be an easy one for me to work around. So we go on the 18th. That's going to be our next. And there's Avis writing it on the board. I love it. Very teacher-like. Lots going on in the news. If you haven't heard, there was a quote unquote bipartisan bill passed that addressed a lot of different issues relating to guns and gun control, including but not limited to those under the age of 21 having an extended period for background checks, as well as some other odds and ends here and there that have to do with school safety, that have to do with enhanced mental record supply to NICS, and some other sort of one-off issues that aren't the usual hot buttons. We need, universal background checks because that has something to do with nothing. I don't know what that has to do with anything, or some other one-offs. These actually seem to apply. So I would imagine that you will all see a rush of business to some extent based on these happenings. And I will let my friend Hank talk about that a little bit in a minute. We continue to see revocations, or at least notices of revocation, being issued for just about anybody that doesn't cross a T or dot an I. We've yet to actually conduct a revocation hearing, because for political reasons, I believe, the ones that we are involved in, and there's 4 of them, are all pushed off into October or late September. And it's likely because the midterm elections will occur in November, and a DIO doesn't have to render a decision on the revocations for 60 to 90 days. So I believe that we're being backloaded as far as our 4 revocations are concerned. 2 are hot clients that were not clients previously, and 2 are existing clients. And I'll keep you posted on all that, but the bottom line is they have hired a lot more IOIs. They are all very strict and stringent as far as enforcing the rules. It has gone back to the bad old days, which I'm sure Bouchard and Franzak can talk about before because both, for those who don't know, both Mike Bouchard and Mike Franzak and our Director of Compliance Emeritus, Mr. Zamillo, were all instrumental in bringing about conforming the rules and standards and procedures and processes that inspections and revocations would undertake. It used to just be sort of willy-nilly, and they were, when they were at headquarters, instrumental in creating a uniform system Now, I don't know if that uniform system remains in place. We do see that that uniform system has been influenced heavily by the Department of Justice above the ATF, and obviously influenced by the Biden administration, who controls the Department of Justice. So even with it a uniform system, it still could be draconian, which it seems as though we're moving in that direction. But I'll let the boys talk about that. That's basically my view from the top for the past month of what's been going on. Very busy month, very busy times. We have had, and I'll let Brian speak to this, we've basically had one new client sign up almost per day for the past few months. So people know that they need assistance. They know that we're here. They know that we work well in the sandbox with others, and we have been extraordinarily busy. So to that end, I apologize if anyone has tried to reach out to me and I haven't gotten back to you. I repeat, the best way to get a hold of me, particularly with a question, is through the help desk. And if you don't know how to use the help desk, then the client relations team can be in touch and teach you how to do that. That's the best way to get my attention, unless, ATF's there burning down the house, and then, just call me and believe me, I answer those. In fact, over the weekend, I think we had a suicide on the range. Let me look around. Yep. Now I see where that happened. He's here today. And so we answer calls all the time. I think it was a Sunday or Saturday. When was that, Brian? What were we were doing something stupid, me and you. I forget what we were doing. We were doing brotherly dumb shit, but either way, we're always around. So that's my spiel. Let's start with Hank, since that was my first comment of the day about the sales being all over the place. For those of you who are new or don't know, Hank Yasek is a retail guru. He's our subject matter expert on business operations mostly in retail. He has held this position. He used to be an FFL, used to have his own shop. We were talking about closing for early July when you had your shop. He was held a position as a trainer, for lack of better words. I mean, you were sort of like the guru, the subject matter expert on business operations at AccuSport. You have your own operation now, Point of Impact.
Yep.
Talk to us, baby. Tell us what's going on out there.
Yeah. So, and again, I've been sort of absent for a couple months. I've been traveling all over the country, working with.
And folks. Shame on you, because nothing's more important than me and this.
But the big one, and this is the big thing that I've been seeing, and people have been reaching out to me, is they fully recognize that their sales organization, their sales team, have to get back into that salesmanship mode again, and not just be, hey, I've got something you want, let me go ring you up type mode. They're squarely seeing that a lot of their staff is struggling right now to keep the sales volume up, in the sense of not just the firearm, but the accessories, now that products are becoming more available, and so on and so forth. But that aside, in my travels, some of the things that I've been seeing, and one of the ones that is a head scratcher for me right now, with all the political stuff that's going on in the media and politicians passing stuff and all that, is the inconsistency around the country. I've talked with some shops here in the last few weeks, and they're like, every AR I have was sold within a matter of a week. Other shops are like, I still got tons of ARs. It's handguns that are selling, and ammo is still very consistent. And so I would just say to folks, if you're seeing one sector, like if you're one of the shops that hasn't seen ARs really selling, but your handguns are, brace for the AR side. It's all coming in fits and starts, depending on where you're at in the country. But by and large, we are seeing another spike in business every time some political saber rattling is going on from that perspective. In your hiring practices, and this relates to Chris and what FFLGuard does, the other piece I hear people struggling with is hiring quality employees. And they'll bring some folks on that maybe aren't quite as optimum as they want, but gosh darn it, with all these revocation hearings, train these folks on how to do forms properly. If you're still on paper, seriously look at getting an electronic bound book system for doing your 4473 processing in your stores, just to make sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, because software does that a lot better than humans can. I remember in my store, hair pulling moments where we literally had multiple safety nets in place and get an ATF checked and still have a problem with the paper form after 4 people inspected it. And there were still mistakes on the forms. It's just humans are good at overlooking things, especially when it's mundane and it's the same thing over and over and over again. So that's the other piece I'm hearing is folks struggling to get their staffs trained on how to do paperwork accurately. And one of the best safety nets that you can get is just convert to electronic 4473s and get away from paper as best as you possibly can. Brian, anything you want to add on that front? I saw you giving me kind of a thumbs up there.
I'm sorry, Brian or me, because I was gonna say.
Either one of you.
Yeah,
I can talk about Fastbound,
well, we work with
Epicor,
multiple
Fastbound.
companies that, right,
Right.
do have an electronic 4473 integrated within their system. And I can tell you from, I've been back working with my brother now. I think we're on 8 years we've been back together, working together. And 8 years ago, it was pretty much all paper. And I've seen how shops, companies, how they've changed once they've gone to electronic, how you can see almost a weight come off of their shoulders because the electronic systems catch 90% of the violations that you could make on a paper form or that you could miss on a paper form. And that's why I was agreeing with you, Hank. 4473 after 4473 after 4473, I would still catch places where they had 2, 3, 4 checks on their 4473s and still missed something. So if you are not yet electronic, you have the ability to move to electronic. I highly encourage it.
I wouldn't even encourage it at this point. To me, you just have to now. With as stringent as ATF is being, it's not an option anymore. And I see that the pain with some of the folks that I work with, again, from the perspective of hiring new staff and trying to train them up. And these are not the most optimum people. They're hiring warm bodies to fill staffing hours that they need. And you're just hanging yourself out there for violations. So yeah, I know it's an expense, but it's an expense that's one of those, okay, I spend this much money for electronic 4473s, or I put myself at a very high risk of having a protracted inspection that's going to maybe have me shut my store down for a period of time while they're doing it. I promise you, it's totally worth it right now, particularly in the hiring environment that we're currently in at the moment. So that's just one that I'm seeing out there talking with folks where they're struggling, and the folks that are not converting to electronics are really putting themselves at risk from that perspective.
So that brings up 2 issues before I punt over to Mr. Franzak that popped into my mind as the things that I've seen in the past month. Number one is no ATF personnel, whether they are the highest ranks or the lowest, can either recommend any particular electronic system, nor can they dissuade you from converting to electronic for any reason. They cannot interfere with commerce in any way. They cannot tell you, oh, you should go with Epicor and you shouldn't go with Doo-doo-doo, or you should go with Fastbound and not go with blah, blah, blah. They can't say that. They can't tell you not to use it. They can't tell you to use it. They can't tell you not to join FFLGuard or not to use, they are a neutral party and they're the government. They cannot render an opinion. That was one thing that I have seen over the course of the past month, opinionated IOIs.
Another one I want to add to that, Chris, though,
Yeah.
And this is one that weirdly in the last 6 months, I've run into a few retailers. In the world of our industry, we're getting more and more savvy business people involved in our industry. And I'm running into some that have tech backgrounds. And I run into 3 clients of mine who have enough savvy that they built their own electronic 4473 software. And I'm not like, don't put that on a third party's lap. Do not try and do that yourself. Let someone else get their system certified, so they can prove to you. Because then if there is a screw up, guess whose fault it is? It's their fault, not your fault in that perspective. Right. I would never, ever recommend somebody do it in-house from that perspective.
I agree. I'm always about passing liability onto someone else. And also, you know, you don't want that to be a slice of the pie that is your day. I'm also, not only am I an FFL selling firearms,
Mhm.
taking care of all the regulations I need to, but I'm also a programmer. Like, just concentrate on what you need to concentrate on and let the guys who concentrate on electronic A&D and 4473 handle those sort of things. The other thing I've seen an uptick in for the last month has been our training, our online training. So just a quick reminder, not an upsell, just a quick reminder. We have online training, and there's nothing better than printing out a training certificate for one of your employees to show that they have undergone some sort of training. Why? Because training an employee is not required by the Gun Control Act. Not required. You don't have to do inventory. You don't have to train employees. You don't have to do any of those things. But if you do, it certainly will go a long way for you in case you forget to cross a T or dot an I. So I highly recommend our training, electronic training platform for any new employee. It is $100 per license. I think it's two licenses, gets you 4 sessions. And you have to take a test as the employee. The super user knows how the test is progressing. So the super user is you, the points of contact. And then at the end of it, you get to print up a fancy little certificate to hang on the wall that says you're certified by us. So it's another good, you know, arrow in the quiver to have. With that said, I think I can segue into Mr. Franzak. How are you down? This is a beautiful time to be down the beach where you live. So how are you, bud?
I'm excellent. And I'm going to touch base on a couple things add on a couple of things Chris brought up regarding that Senate bipartisan gun legislation that was passed. A couple of things to add on in addition to what Chris already mentioned. The interesting thing to me is they're going to be coming out, probably going to have to really define this. They're going to clarify the definition of a federally licensed firearms dealer. Now that is very vague right now. It basically starts off now is if you're engaged in the business of selling firearms for a livelihood and profit. And over the years, you know, ATF attorneys have, you know, failed to say, or even any AUSA who had a case for that, is basically if you sell one firearm for profit, that's all you need to be a federally licensed dealer. It doesn't say you have to sell 10, 5, 15, 100 guns a year. So it's never been defined. So I'm interested in seeing when they get into the nuts and bolts of that part of it, how are they going to define a federally licensed firearms dealer? Because their goal here for that one is they want more background checks done on people. That's the only reason that's done. They want more background checks done. But of course, they didn't do a universal background check for at gun shows or wherever. So if somebody's going to be frequenting a gun show, selling guns, they may be targeting them in the future, saying, okay, this person's coming to he's on a gun show circuit selling guns. They need to get a license. And currently what happens with that, when I was with ATF, we saw that more so for like a lot of auctioneers who were selling guns on consignment without a license. Some other entities who were at flea markets selling guns consistently. But what happens is they're just warned. They get a warning because an AUSA doesn't want to, it's not a sexy case for them. They don't want to prosecute them. So they give them a letter, warns them, if you continue to do this, the next time that we find that you're continuing to sell guns, we will prosecute you. I have never seen anybody prosecuted for that yet. So I don't know if these people continue to sell guns or not, but it's kind of an interesting part for me is that I want to see how this gets defined in the future. Another one that was kind of interesting to me too was the closing, they said, the so-called loophole for boyfriends. So right now, domestic violence is with a spouse. So they want to include boyfriends or significant others in that definition too, that those individuals can get their firearms taken away from them for whatever period of time. So that's an interesting one for me also to see how that goes, because that's a lot of issues going on now, not just with spouses, but with boyfriends, etc. So on that note, let me get off of that and go into some other issues I wanted to bring up. And we touched base on this throughout the last few months. Right now, some of you haven't been inspected for 4+ years. And there was reasons for that, obviously. We had COVID. We had a shortage of IOIs in the field. So that's another reason why a lot of people weren't getting inspected. So they had to pick, people they wanted to inspect. Usually they're ones that had a lot of traces for top of the list. That's why some of you have not been inspected, because maybe you didn't have a lot of traces. But going forward, a lot of you are seeing when an ATF comes out, they're using a lot of it, like Hank was mentioned, electronics for FFLs. Well, they're using a lot of the iPads right now. And a lot of their inspection is online. When they close out with you for your review of acknowledgement of regulations, if you have a violation sheet, it's all electronic now. They're having you sign the iPad that you received this. So that is supposedly to keep things moving quicker, get things done faster. Some ways it has. It'll be good down the road, just not today, because a lot of people there's a lot of stumbling blocks with that, with any new database that gets implemented. But for them, it's a new thing going forward. And that just started a couple years, like 2-3 years ago. So it's still a lot of bugs going on with that electronic inspection process for them. But with that, towards the end of the inspection, I'm getting a lot of questions from FFLs now. Wait a minute, why is ATF asking me about my security? Why are they asking me about my lease? What about my zoning issues? Things like that. So just so you know, towards the end of the inspection, it could be at the beginning too. They want to get a better idea of how your operations are existing. They're going to ask you a lot of security questions. And so they're going to be asking about if you have any security system. Do you have cameras? Okay. Do you have any motion detectors, things that you have bars in your windows? Is there anything out front that prevents somebody from driving a truck through? So things like that, they want to put in there. And if you have it, that's great. That helps us out if you get in trouble down the road, because you're taking proactive steps for your FFL's business. They're also going to ask you about your state and local licensing. Are you up to date with your state and local licensing? Because if you're not, and what they're going to do, they're going to send a referral to that state or local entity saying, hey, this guy is not up to date with their sales tax license, for instance, if you have sales tax. They're also going to start looking at if you still have any changes in your business structure as far as responsible people. Have there been any changes? They're going to ask you those questions. And that, if you haven't made that, then they're going to tell you need to make those changes with your license. Regarding each responsible person, you might have somebody now who's been added, but you did not add them onto your license since they've been added as a responsible person. So they're going to update that with you. Internal controls, they're going to go over that with you also with any business. Like Hank was mentioning, a lot of new business savvy people probably have in place standard operating procedures for all their business internal controls. This is important too, for you to have those. So when new employees come on, they know what these internal controls are, what those standard operating procedures are for how you conduct a firearm sale. And then log that gun either in or out of your book when it's acquired or sold. So those are important things. They're going to be talking to you about that to make sure everything's up to date, and make sure you've got all your licensing in place. So these are things that you might not have been subjected to in the past, but now it's something that's going to come down the pike, and you are going to be asked those questions sometime during inspection, before or usually towards the end. Also, so if you had another item, switching to another one, is if you had a warning conference in the past, you will automatically be inspected within 2 years. Within 2 years. And if you had a warning conference where you met with the DIO or the area supervisor, if you met with the DIO, you're almost at the line of revocation. That's why you're at that point. But if you met with the area supervisor, either one, you're going to have a recall inspection. Now, a warning letter, if you got a warning letter, it's not a meet and greet with the area super or director of administrative operations. If you just got a letter that says you're in violation, and continuing, if these violations continue, your license may be revoked. If you get one of those, that you could be subject to another inspection within 2 years. It all depends on that that office. If that office thinks that the violations are severe enough that you need to come back out within 2 years, they'll schedule that too. So keep those two things in mind, that you need to, if you get a warning letter or warning conference, you could be getting inspected within a 2-year period. Very important item today is SOT. SOT, July 1, those SOT renewals should automatically be in there before July 1. You can do it online. Avis will be posting online how you can do that electronically. Mr. Brian's going to do his this week. So, so he's going to get his done. And ways you can do this online this week or next week prior to the end of the month to get your SOT up to date. So that's a very good. Oh, also because it's important, and he was going to put online today, because if you're waiting for that renewal message from ATF saying, hey, your SOT is due, you are not receiving that message. They were not sending out any renewal, hey, renewal notes saying you need to send in your SOT. That is being done away with. They're putting that onus on you, the SOT taxpayer, that you know this time period by now. You need to get that in and get those renewals paid for prior to the start of July. So make sure that gets done as soon as possible. Electronically is the quickest way. Some people still want to do the form. That's fine too, but it's going to take a little more time. But if you want to get it quick and get it in and get it done, that those instructions will be put out hopefully today by Avis. Another thing, one last thing I want to point out, I had a few questions on this one coming up the past few weeks, is FFLs, their contractors, non-employees, whoever, taking guns off premise. If anyone, now you can take an FFL and their employees can take firearms off premise for legitimate business reasons without having a background check done. And they have to be an employee of your business, an actual employee. And it's in a ruling 2010-1, and it says not for a lengthy period of time. They say it's for a limited period of time. Okay. Now that could be even for people who if you have employees, or if you're a big manufacturer, you may have some salesmen who are employed by you and they're taking guns out to build up sales. But if it's a contractor, someone who's evaluating your guns, and not an employee who just wants to take one of your guns to shoot with over the weekend, that has to have a background check completed on that. That cannot happen. Background checks must be done. So the only reason I brought this up is we had probably at least 3 questions on that within the last few weeks from some people. And I just wanted to put a note of that down just to bring that up. But it's in the ATF ruling 2010-1. It's pretty specific. And there's, when a background check has to be done for that purpose. And, but that's the last thing I wanted to bring up today. Oh, I'm going to add one more thing. Sorry, Chris. Only because this is a very important thing as we go forward, is Cerakoting. And Brian knows this too. We've talked to many FFLs about this. Cerakoting is a manufacturing operation. It strengthens the firearm. And that's why it is a manufacturing operation only. I know it seems ridiculous, but if you are Cerakoting and you are not a Type 7 licensee, you need to get a manufacturer's license. No matter if you send it to somebody else's Cerakote or not, you need to be a manufacturer. And we're having a few of those come up lately also, but that's always a question that's out there, is about Cerakoting.
And so, to be fair, this has been a moving target in the last year, I'd say, because we've been dealing with this specifically in relation to one of our distributors and one of our Florida retailers / manufacturers, who will remain nameless to protect the innocent. But it used to be one thing, and then just out of the blue, the way ATF has seemed to do a lot in the last year, it's something different. And we find out after the fact. So no one's told, the public is not given notice of anything. And then this is the way it is. That is one of the issues that has been a fluid, ever-changing topic in our lives. Specifically, what is this, June? So yeah, for the first half of this year. Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Mr. Franzak. Let's move on to the next Mike. Always my first favorite Mike. Sorry, Mike Franzak, but Mike Bouchard has tenure over you. So Michael Bouchard, what is going on in the world of ATF headquarters, including but not limited to the new guy that's in there, the confirmation of the guy that's trying to get in there? What's going on in your life? Talk to us. I miss you. I need to hear all about what you're doing.
Well, the acting director is also a U.S. attorney, so he is not, he's in name only as the acting director. Marvin Richardson, who was the acting director, formerly deputy director, is doing all of the appearances for ATF and serving as a representative at all the different functions. So Gary Restaino is the U.S. attorney. He's still carrying both titles, and he's spending most of his time in, I think it's New Mexico. Steve Dettelbach, the nominee for the directorship, apparently they believe they have enough votes to get him confirmed. It's either Washington Post or Wall Street Journal mentioned a number of Republicans and people who had opposed Chipman and other nominees are willing to support Dettelbach. He's got a lot of support from police agencies, et cetera. He's a good guy. He used to be a prosecutor when I worked in the Baltimore Field Division. So he knows ATF very well. So hopefully they'll get him confirmed and they'll have somebody in there who can take ownership of everything that's going on, particularly all the different directives that they're getting from the administration. And that'll be good too, is that's the administration's guy per se. He's coming in from the outside. He's going to give an independent view to the administration about what's going on and what the impacts of the different things that they're trying to ask ATF to do, which some of them are ridiculous. So hopefully, once he sees the impact of things like notice of revocation for trivial things, he'll be able to convince the administration this is not the best use of ATF's time or resources. I'll be meeting with ATF later this month. They have their 50th anniversary from the time they separated from the IRS. So all the new leadership will be there. I believe most of the special agents in charge will be there. So I'll get together with them, have captive audience for at least a day to be able to talk to all of them and meet some of the newer people who were there. Tom Chittum, who was the acting deputy director and former assistant director of field operations, he just retired. He was a go-to person that we went to all the time when we had issues. So he's now retired, working in the private industry. And then the only other thing I have is kind of what Mike spoke about, backgrounds. It's a good policy to do background checks on all your employees, particularly your newer ones, some of the ones who've been around a while, you know them. IntelliCorp is a company that we use with FFLGuard to do background checks. They're very good. It's reasonable. I think it's like $20, $25 to do a background check. But I think it's also important that you put in your employee rules or handbook that they're required, and give it to them in writing, they're required to notify you if they become a prohibited person. So if they get arrested, convicted of a felony or a domestic crime of violence, they are now prohibited from possessing firearms. They need to let you know, because the last thing you want ATF to do is come in and do an inspection and find out you've got people who are prohibited working behind the counter. So pending any questions, that's all I've got.
Yeah, Mike, the interesting thing that we've talked about with background checks over the course of time is implementing some systemic checking process where, okay, just because you check somebody's background the day they walk in the door, you may want to have a rolling 2-year policy where you just check everybody's background, because from the time you walk in the door to 2 years later, God knows what could happen. So don't limit yourselves as an employer to simply doing the check the day you hire them. Also say we do a check on hire date, and we do a check on January 1st of every year, or something like that.
Yeah, Chris, I would highly recommend that. As I actually ran into that in my shop. And the only reason I found out that I had an employee that was arrested for shoplifting was the sheriff that arrested him was a customer at the store and went out of his way to let me know that that had happened. Otherwise, if I hadn't had that relationship, I might not have ever have known that had happened.
Yeah, that's why it's great to pick a date certain. January 1st of every even year, we do everybody, something like that. I used to, and I still do, tell everybody that when we change the clocks, that should be when you check to make sure you have more than one RP on your license. It's just an arbitrary date, and it's good to do. Kind of like, you change your batteries on your smoke alarms, your smoke detectors when you change the clocks. Now, we're not going to be soon enough. There's no more changing of the clocks, but that's not until next year. We have one more cycle to go through, I think, of standard, and then daylight time becomes standard. But in any event, my point is pick a date. And I like to say January 1st or SHOT Show. Every even year we do background checks, or wait till after SHOT Show because you need that headache while you're at SHOT Show. But pick something and do it. So we will close out today with the client relations team led by Brother Brian, whose hair is looking very stylish, very on fleek today. Yes, very full, handsome. You're a handsome man, Brian. What do you have? And your fearless Avis and Deborah partners there in crime, what do you guys have for us?
I will defer to the beautiful women that I work with. And I can say one thing about Miss Deborah. If you get a call from Miss Deborah, there's a reason behind it, mainly because we are missing some sort of information from your file. So please, if you get a call from Miss Deborah from FFLGuard, please return her calls or return her emails, because that means we are either missing your current FFL or a cell phone number, something along those lines. Avis, what do you got?
Not a whole lot. I know that SOTs are being removed, so that means also if you're signed up for our SOT program, please send us a copy of it so we can keep your file up to date, so that Deborah doesn't have to hunt you down for that either. But other than that, keep sending stuff in. People are using the help desk, and we are glad you are. So just keep it coming.
Miss Deborah, are you seeing any type of repeat questions when you make any calls? Is there anything that you feel we may have missed on the call, maybe?
Not that I know of. Everything's been taken care of.
That's what I like to hear. See, a well-oiled machine, brother, we run like for you.
As you should. I appreciate that. I'm fumbling here on the screen because Matthew Langford asked, do we need to run a background check on ourselves to have in our records, or is the ATF background check for RPs good enough? And I responded to Gina Barkin directly by mistake, but I meant to respond to everybody by saying, no, the RP background check should suffice. And you will know if you become a prohibited person. So I don't think you need to do a background check on yourself. So no, yeah, the answer is you don't have to do that, but it's really more for your employees, your staff, etc. So with that said, that's 45 minutes of your life that I'll now let you get back to. We appreciate your time. We will put out there when this video is available for a review and replay if you want anyone else in your organization to see it. Otherwise, we will get back together on, what date did I say? July 18th? 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Hope you guys have a wonderful 4th of July holiday. And if you need us, please call the client relations team, text us, email us. You know how to get a hold of us. Speak to you next month.
And recording stop.